Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody that's here, those who will watch online later.
I think it's gonna be a pretty good lesson.
This-
And Lisa we got into pretty hot and heavy.
Yeah, this is a discussion. So
About this one.
just so you will know, I know you probably could not hear Eddie this week. Today's portion is Devarim, starts in Deuteronomy. So we're starting the last book of the Torah.
Or is it?
Where is it? Where is
Oh,
it? Okay, so we are now beginning the last book of the Torah, Deuteronomy,
Oh,
but in Hebrew it is called Devarim. Okay, and so Deuteronomy is often called the second law because in Greek, Deutero means two, nomos meaning law, so second law. But in Hebrew, it's something different. Of course, it's Devarim, which is the plural of Devar, which is word. So it's actually words. And that's where we get the name of this portion from. This book is also called Mishneh Torah, which is really like a copy or a retelling of the Torah. But is it really? So I want to come back to that. In this parsha, we see that this is Moshe's final address to the children of Israel. And it includes various episodes throughout their 40 years in the wilderness, from the murmuring to the spies and to the victories over Sihon and Og. But as I go through the study this year, I want to focus on various elements or an analysis of the book of Deuteronomy instead of looking at the verses. Okay. And I also want to cover why I think that this is probably the most important of the first 5 books. So this study may be a little different than what you're used to. Maybe. It may be controversial.
Maybe.
Okay. So before I even go into anything, I'm going to say this first. I believe Genesis through Deuteronomy. I believe what it says is true. I believe Moses wrote the Torah. So that said, no, that's where I'm coming from when we're going through. So
you're gonna be talking about Devar?
Devar, yes, Devar.
The
So first of all, before we even get into it, like I said, I'm not going to go through like all the passages here. Hopefully you've read the Parsha, you know what it is. And, but I do want to just look at a few things just to pull that out, because I do believe that there's so much hidden in the Hebrew that we often miss. So let's start in Deuteronomy 1:1. And it says, "These are the words that Moshe spoke to all Israel on the far side of the Jordan, in the desert, in the Arvah, between Paran and Tophel, Lavan, Hatzerot, and Dizahav. It is 11 days journey from Horeb to Kadesh Barnea by the way of Mount Seir." Okay, so I just wanted to read this first part because, like I said, we're not going to go through all the verses here because I want to look at the whole book and we're going to pick it apart and analyze different things and talk about things you may not have heard. So I'm going to put on my history teacher hat and I'm going to put on my ELA hat at various points. So you're going to get part of a history lesson and you're going to get part of an English lesson. So first of all, like I said, I wanted to pull out some of the Hebrew because if we look at just those first verses, we read it and we're like, oh, okay, it's just whatever. It's telling us where they went, whatever. But remember, Hebrew words have meanings. So when you look at those words, and we look at the word Israel in verse 1, okay? Israel means overcomes with L. Okay. When we see on the far side, that is actually the word ever in Hebrew, which means beyond or across. The word Jordan or Yarden means to descend or come down. It's from the root yarad. And a lot of times it's talking about revelation coming down. Okay. Then we have the word desert. Well, there are multiple words for desert. So you always have to look in the Hebrew because this one happens to be midbar. And midbar is also read without the vowel pointings as medaber, which means to speak, as like with your mouth. Okay. But then another word for desert, which happens to be the next word here, arava. Arava is also the word for desert, and it's a desert plain, and it comes from the root arab, meaning like where we get Arab, meaning a mix or evening. Okay. Because the evening is a mix of light and night. Okay. Then we have the word suf, which is in Hebrew end or last. Between Paran means a place of caverns. And it is from the word pa'ar, meaning Adon. Okay. And then Tofel means white, but also Lavan means white. So when we think about white, a lot of times we think about something as pure or purity. Hatzarot means a settlement. Okay. Hatzarot means a settlement, but it's actually two Hebrew words put together, hatzer and ot. Hatzer is to sound, like to blow a shofar. And ot is a sign.
A sign?
A sign. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then D Zahav is D is a place, and Zahav is gold. So it's a place of gold. And then it says 11 days or 11. Well, actually, it just says 11. Okay. So when we look at that, 11 written in Hebrew here is actually 1 and 10. Okay. So we've got 1 and 10, 1/10 or 1 tithe or a remnant. Okay. And the word journey actually was added. That word wasn't there. But then we have Horeb. And Horeb also means desert, but it comes from the root harab, which means desolate or laid waste. Okay. So when you look at the meanings of those words, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to read those verses, but I'm going to put in the meanings. Okay. But the last part of it where it says to Kadesh Barnea by the way of Mount Seir, in Hebrew, it says it a little differently. That last part, it says it this way. It says the way, which is Dedek, which is way or the path. And then it says of Mount Seir, and Seir is a hairy goat, like the goat god or the goat demon Satir. Okay. And then it says to Kadesh, and Kadesh means set apart or holy. Okay. And Barnea is actually Bar and Nua, two Hebrew words, bar meaning sun and Nua meaning wandering. So when I go back and look at those verses, I'm going to put the meaning in instead of the word. Okay. And I'm going to read it. These are the words Moshe spoke to all who overcome with El. Beyond the revelation of the mouth, that which was spoken at evening toward the end of all things, and at the last, between their adornment and cleansing and purification, their white, and the sounding of the shofar and the city of gold, 1 tithe, a remnant from desolation out of the path of idolatrous worship to become a set apart son of wandering.
That's the first words.
Those are those first verses, just with the Hebrew meanings and their roots, as opposed to the way we read it in English. So do you see how there's a message hidden within the Hebrew that why it means something, why there are certain words that are used there. Because when you look at that, he's basically writing, he's giving a prophecy here. It says, these are the words which Moshe spoke to all those who overcome with El, beyond the revelation of the mount, beyond what was given at Mount Sinai, that which was spoken at the evening toward the end of all things. So toward the end of the time and the last. And at their adornment and cleansing, when they're going to be purified in purity and white.
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, I mean, you would
Okay.
never say that unless you knew the Hebrew.
And you
just read right over.
Yeah, that's why I said we read it and we just totally miss what it says.
That's totally, I mean,
Yeah.
that's really a neat thing.
Okay, so I'm going to read the whole passage again with those meanings. These are the words which Moshe spoke to all those who overcome with El, beyond the revelation of the mouth, that which was spoken at the evening toward the end of all things, at the last, between their adornment and cleansing and purification and the sounding of the shofar, and the city of gold, one tithe, a remnant from the desolation out of the path of idolatrous worship to becoming a set apart son of wandering. So
That is amazing.
that's why I said that there's so many different levels that we often miss in the Hebrew. So
Did you say those last two words were to become
a set apart son of wandering, which is Kadesh Barnea or Barnea.
Are you recording this? So we'll get
Yes, I am recording this so that we can go back and watch for those. Okay, so and notice verse 5. On the far side of the Jordan in Eretz Moab began Moshe to expound on this Torah, saying, okay, so the Hebrew word here for expound is the word be'er, which comes from the root ba'ar, which means to make plain or distinct or clear. So the whole purpose here is to make the Torah clear. Okay. And this root is actually only used 3 times in scripture. The first one is in verse 5 here. The second time it's used is in Deuteronomy 27 and verse 8. And I'll read that verse for you. It says, you are to write on the stones all of the words of this Torah very clearly. Okay. It uses that root ba'ar. And the only other place that root is used is in Habakkuk 2:2. It says, and Yah answered me and he said, write down the vision clearly on tablets so even a runner can read it. Okay.
Okay, I thought you said 5 times.
No,
3.
3 times.
Okay.
3 times. So, like I said, Moshe's words here were to make clear or plain the Torah. So as we go through like this study, like I said, it's going to be different. It's going to be more of analysis on Deuteronomy, Devarim. So as we do that, I also wanted to think about, since we've, to the last book of the first 5 books here, all of the names of the books of the Torah actually come from the first verses in the first parsha. Okay. Because Genesis, Bereshit, is the first parsha is Bereshit. Exodus is Shemot, and the first parsha is Shemot. Vayikra, okay. Bamidbar, and Devarim. Okay.
Yeah.
But if we look at the whole Torah, there's also a hidden prophecy. Because if we look at the names, in the English, we got Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. But in Hebrew, they are Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Devarim, which tells us what? Bereshit, in the beginning. Shemot are the names. Vayikra, of his called out ones. Bamidbar, in the wilderness. And Devarim, and these are his words. So the first 5 books tell us that in the beginning are the names of the called out ones in the wilderness, and these are his words.
Wow.
So his word is important. Okay.
Yah doesn't do anything by chance.
Yeah.
Every word that comes out of his mouth is
deep.
It's the Ruach, it's the Holy Spirit, and it's got a meaning so deep. We can't understand it unless we understand the Hebrew or get into the Word or pray or the Spirit. Let's just see that.
Right. I don't know if you can hear that on the recording. So he was just saying that Yah's word is so deep that a lot of times unless you know the Hebrew, you don't really see a lot of this stuff. And we a lot of times just read over stuff and don't sit down and really study it because there's a difference between, and y'all know this, there is a difference between reading something and studying something.
Yeah. Love this.
Because I can read something and not necessarily remember it later. And that's why, a lot of parents don't realize that school's starting now, that you have to teach kids how to study. Because, we think, oh, well, they just know how to study. When you tell them to go home and study this, they don't know how to study.
Right.
You have to teach them how to study.
Yeah, they have to let their brain, you have to slow it down, let it process.
Well, yep, you got to process and you got to learn how to look at it.
They're like a long sentence or story.
Right. And so one of the things I'm going to show you today is something that I do sometimes, especially when I've got the time. And so when you're reading, this is how sometimes y'all are like, how do you get from here to over here? Well, I'll show you how I do that sometimes. Okay. So first of all, now that we got that, his word's important. So what exactly are his words? Mm-hmm. He gave his Torah to Moses. And we're going to look at his words in detail. But like I said, we're going to look at Deuteronomy in detail. So Devarim, the book of Devarim, is different than each one of the first 4 books. Okay?
Does anybody know how different right off the bat?
There's a couple of ways it's different.
Well, most of this is what the Lord is saying in this one.
Okay, well, that's one part, yeah.
The difference from the first
Books in this one.
and Deuteronomy.
I said in Devarim, it's words and it's mostly God's
Okay.
words saying to Moses.
Okay, she said, it's mostly God's word saying to Moses. That's one. There's a couple
Okay.
other things.
Okay.
And part of it is in the style of it, okay?
Yeah.
Which we are not familiar with. But ancient history, archaeologists have uncovered in our recent history more historical documents, and one of those is the stelae of vultures. The stelae are the stele of vultures, okay? And yes, vulture is a bird, but the stelae or the stele is, when you think about those big stones that had stuff written on them, okay? And this was a document that's been uncovered in about and it's dated to about 2500 BC. BC.
Wow.
From Mesopotamia, which is where? Middle East, yes. Okay. Mesopotamia, between the 2 rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates. So we're looking at basically modern day Iraq, part of Iran. Okay. That area. So it actually records the victory of Lagash over Umma, and the stele or the seal is where King of Lagash actually makes a treaty with the King of Umma. And they wrote it on stones, okay? And it's written in cuneiform. Okay. So, and
Mesopotamia, did they use hieroglyphics or
no, hieroglyphics is Egyptian.
Yeah, but
Cuneiform was writing before Egypt developed the hieroglyphics.
Okay.
So it's older than that.
the Paleo Hebrew is a lot of.
It is.
Hieroglyphics.
Well, no, part of it could be like cuneiform. Yeah, it's a proto whatever. So I'm going to show, and I'm going to share just the picture here, just so you can see that this is the stele that was found. Okay. And I will turn it around just a second. I'm going to stop the share.
Is
And I'm going to. So that stele is actually, been recovered. It's in a museum and they mounted it there so you can see what it looks like. There is also another stele that was found that was dated to approximately 2554 to 2218 BC. That is an agreement, and I've got a picture of it too, between the king of Akkad. Akkad was a city in Mesopotamia. Okay. If you go down the river, the Tigris and Euphrates River, and you keep going down, Akkad, remember you had Ur, which is, where Abraham is from. Okay. And there's the king of Akkad. That's where we get the Akkadian Empire from. Okay. Sargon was the most famous king of Akkad. Okay. And he made an agreement with the king of Elam. Okay. And that stele has been found. And it is also written there and it's in a museum. Okay. So we have these two documents that are from about 2500 to 2200 BC that have been found recently. So we know their style of writing, these agreements or these treaties. Okay, so from these ancient documents, we can gain an understanding of how ancient treaties worked. And by analyzing those, they have found that there is a pattern between those documents and the book of Deuteronomy. Okay.
There's been more archaeological finds this year than they've ever been in one spot, one place. Right outside the city of David, they found two ruby rings and a lot of other things.
Yeah, if you found.
I mean, and just right around each other where they go down.
Yeah, she's talking about like how there's all these archaeological finds you're finding in the city of David. They just found one this week.
Yeah.
Before Tish B'Av, of a coin.
Yes.
A bronze coin. So. But when you look at these documents, okay, these ancient documents that they were found here, they had something in common with Deuteronomy. They had a preamble, they have a historical review, they have stipulations, they have where it's going to be deposited, their covenant, their agreement, their treaty. It's got curses and blessings that's going to happen if curses if you disobey this treaty or disregard this treaty, or blessings if you're following it, what's going to help. And there's also witnesses. So when we look at that, and I just found in one of the Bible commentaries I have, and this was just something that I saw, and I'm like, I'm just going to put the quote in here because this is straight from a Bible commentary. It says, archaeologists have recovered many treaties from the second and the first millennial between nations and their vassals. The second millennial treaties are mostly made between Hittites and others, while the first millennial examples come from during the time of the Assyrian kings, and I don't know how to say their names, Asarhaddon and Ashurbanipal. That one I do know how to say, on the 7th century BC. The format of these treaties shows striking similarity to the format of a number of covenant documents in the Bible, most notably Deuteronomy. These treaties begin with a preamble that identifies who the suzerain is the higher king. Like when you're having these two kings that are making a treaty, you have one that's more powerful than the other, the suzerain who's making the treaty. Besides giving his titles and attributes, it emphasizes his greatness and his right to proclaim the treaty. In Deuteronomy, this occupies the first 5 verses of chapter 1. We see who the suzerain is, who's the king that's making this treaty. We see that Yah is going to make this treaty with Israel. Okay. And it goes through listing all of his things that, he's done, why he's a great king here. Okay. Next, the treaties offer historical prologue in which the relationship between the two parties is reviewed. And we see this starting in chapter 1, verse 6, all the way through chapter 3, verse 29, where he goes through and he outlines, this is what I did for you. I brought you out of the land of Egypt. These are all the things. When you fought Sihon, when you fought Og, this is how we won these battles. And he's going through and he's showing them all this. Okay.
Well, in Israel, and like the patriarchs, like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they're the only ones that God's ever made a treaty or a covenant with. No one else.
No other nation. Well, yeah, no. There is another one. There is, yeah, because
That one,
I mean,
the king, but
well, we see, I'll come back to that because I don't want to go too far. So there is a difference between that though. So the next, after the treaties and the historical prologue, the priority is given to the kindness and the power of the suzerain. In Deuteronomy, this section, is chapter 1, verse 6 through chapter 3, verse 29. The core of the treaty is the stipulation section, which details the obligations of each party. Deuteronomy accomplishes the same thing by its presentation of the laws in chapters 4 through 26. And the treaties are concluded by 3 sections of legal material, concluding instructions concerning the document, witnesses to the agreement, blessings and curses that will result from either honoring or violating the treaty. And Deuteronomy does this in chapters 28 through 31. Okay. So, like I said, the whole book of Deuteronomy is built on the same pattern. So I'm going to look at part of it. The preamble, just like the preamble on our Constitution, does what? It gives you the time, the place, and who's doing this covenant. So if we look at verses 1, starting in 1, these are the words Moshe spoke to all of Israel on the far side of the Jordan, in the desert, in the Arava, across from Suf, between Paran and Tophel and Lavan, Hatzerot and Dizahab. It is 11 days journey from Horeb to Kadesh Barnea by the way of Mount Seir. On the first day of the 11th month of the 40th year, Moshe spoke to the people of Israel, reviewing everything that Yah had ordered him to tell them. This was after he defeated Sihon, the king of the Emori, who lived in Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth at Edrei. There, beyond the Jordan in the land of Moab, Moshe looked at it upon himself to expound this Torah and said, okay, so here we see that Moshe is initiating this on behalf of Yah. And he's on the far side of the Jordan, because remember, he didn't cross over.
Oh, right.
On the first day of the 11th month of the 40th year. So we got the time, the date, the place, who's initiating it after leaving Egypt, all of that in the preamble. Okay. The next part is the historical review. That's like I said, he goes through and he starts telling you in verse 6, all the way through chapter 4, all the things that he brought them through. Okay. Then we get the stipulations. In Deuteronomy chapter 5 through 11, that's where we get the general stipulations, which include the Shema, Hear, O Israel, okay? The 10 words, the 10 commandments, okay? That's also included in those chapters. Then we get specific provisions like Deuteronomy 12 through 26, which tell us how you are to carry out all of those stipulations, how they're to be done. Okay. And then we get to chapter 27, and also in chapter 31, it talks about where this covenant is to be put. Okay. After we make this covenant, where are we going to keep them, where they're going to be put, and what they're to be made out of. Okay. And I'm going to go over, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 27 and verse 4, and I will show you that. Deuteronomy 27, verse 4. When you have crossed the Jordan, you are to set up these stones. So they're to be written on stones, as I'm ordering you today on Mount Ebal, and put plaster on them. There you are to erect an altar to Yah your Elohim, an altar made of stones. You're not to use any iron tool on them, but you're to build the altar for Yah your Elohim of uncut stones, and you are to offer burnt offerings on it to Yah your Elohim. You're also to sacrifice peace offerings, eat there, and be joyful in the presence of Yah your Elohim. You are to write on the stones all the words of this Torah very clearly. Okay, so we've got where they're, here we've got this covenant is going to be, you're getting ready to go into this land. I'm getting ready to give you this provision, and this is what you're going to do with it. Turn over to chapter 31.
That's your question about that right there. I've always wondered. Okay, he says take the stone, put plaster on them, but you're not to use any kind of iron tool on them. So how do they write that on the stone? So he's telling them to write.
Well, plaster is wet.
I know.
So you can take a stick and doing it while it's wet, and then when it hardens.
Plaster will not last.
No, that's not going to last there. And that's why we don't really have evidence of all of that written there. That's what
I've always wondered why he didn't tell them not to use it, like two little things. And because he said not to.
Yeah, but he also has the tablets. You also have the tablets that have the 10 words written on it too.
Yeah, but not everybody got to see those. I mean,
Right. Not everybody got to see those, but Deuteronomy 31 and verse 10. What does it say here? Moshe gave them these orders. At the end of every 7 years during the festival of Sukkot in the year of Shemitah, when all of Israel shall come to appear in the presence of Yah at the place he will choose, you are to read this Torah before all of Israel so they can hear it.
So they have to come up for the priest.
So every 7 years, it was supposed to be read. This Torah was supposed to be read before the people. Okay. Now, if we go down to verse 25 in 31, it says where this is to be kept. In verse 25, Moshe gave these orders to the Leviim who carried the ark with the covenant of Yah. Take this book of the Torah and put it next to the ark with the covenant of Yah, so that it can be there as a witness against you. Okay. And then we go through the next section, talks about the blessings and curses. Of course, Deuteronomy chapter 28 through 30 talks about if you will do this, then you will be blessed. If you don't do this, then these curses will fall upon you. If you're breaking the covenant, if you're breaking the treaty.
So that was next to the ark. It wasn't in the ark.
No.
So what that when they carried the ark?
It would still be like the holy articles. They had to do it like the holy articles.
They touched him?
Only certain people, only the Kohathites could touch and carry. They were the ones who carried the Harley. Oh yeah. Because you remember the priests come in and cover the articles, the holy articles with the blue, and then the Kohathites would be able to carry the articles. Right. So only the
against the ark, you couldn't touch it.
No. Okay. Then we have the witnesses. Deuteronomy 30 verse 19 says who these witnesses are to this covenant. I call on heaven and earth to witness against you today that I presented you with life and death, the blessing and the curse. Therefore, choose life so that you will live, you and your descendants. Now, usually, when we go back and look at those ancient documents that were found, their witnesses is, the people that were, okay, we're going to we take, let me go back to the one where we had the two kings. So we had king of Akkad and the king of Elam. And okay, so the king of Akkad worshipped the god Ina, okay, and then say the king of Elam worshipped Enku, okay. So then, not only would they were making this treaty with them, they would say by the name of Enku and Ina are they doing this, and then what would happen is they would make two of these. One the king of Akkad would take and put it in his temple before his God. And the one the king of Elam would take and put in his temple before his God. Okay. So when we look at this, think about the covenants. Okay. Think about where they were put. These are ancient times. The children of Israel would have been familiar with how they made ancient treaties. They're living in that time. But what makes this so unique is who's initiating this covenant? Yah himself. The other covenants are all initiated between two men, and God is their witness. Here we've got God, Yah, making a covenant with man. And so that's why, who is Yah going to have as a witness? But other than his creation, he calls on heaven and earth to be the witnesses to it. He's initiating it himself. And you've got to think about, where were the copies to be placed? In the temple of their God. These 2 tablets of stone. This is why I think there are 2 tablets, because it's not just one tablet has 5 and one tablet has 5, because it says they're written front and back. One tablet is for the children of Israel. One tablet is for Yah. And they both go into the temple of the people. So they both go into his temple because they're both worshiping the same God. Okay. Now,
Wait. First time I've ever heard that.
yeah,
It's great.
And so he called on heaven and earth.
he called on heaven and earth, his creation. Yeah. Because who,
man can abolish that.
right. Nobody can abolish that. So he's going to be faithful to his part. The problem is, we're not sometimes. Okay. So Yah took this secular pattern in the ancient world that Moshe was familiar with and all the patriarchs were familiar with, and used it to create a covenant with his own people. So he didn't use something they didn't know about. He used something they knew. Okay. So you just have a little history lesson.
Very nice.
Now we're going to put on
now, the time we're living in now, our president,
Mhm,
it's all written down.
mhm.
It could be broken.
Yeah.
It could be destroyed.
Yeah, because we're men. You know, we're gonna, yeah.
Everything on this earth is like that. I mean, that man has, you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, because we're a human. We're gonna, tend to break things.
And I think too, that's why when he made the covenant with Abraham, told him to take and cut the animals in half,
Mhm.
and then, God himself walked through.
Yeah, because that's a sign when you walk through that blood, because it is a sign that Abraham didn't walk through it.
So God
but
made
it said, if this is gonna happen if I break that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty awesome right there.
Yeah.
That's something God said himself, he can't break it, he walked through it, that's a covenant. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? It's just awesome. Hey.
Okay, so let's go. I'm gonna put on my ELA teacher hat now, English Language Arts, because we're gonna go back to school and we're gonna think about English class. Because we're going to talk about first person, second person, and third person point of view. Okay. So first person is going to be I or me, or, we're doing something, that's first person. Okay. Second person is when you're talking about the you perspective. And third person is, he, she, they perspective. So for example, okay, for example, first person would be, I love my dog. That's me. I love my dog. That's first person account. Second person account is, you love my dog. Am I talking about me? No, I'm talking about him. So he is the second person. Okay. Third person is, she loves my dog. Okay. So I'm talking about her now, but
It's not him.
okay. So it's this. So yeah. So this tells us a lot. Okay. And why I'm saying this is because I know I'm going back to school, thinking about school, but everybody's going back to school now. But prime example, teaching middle school and kids getting in arguments or a fight. And all of a sudden you got 10 kids run up to you and they want to tell you what happened. And what was my first question? Were you involved? No. Then you need to go. You need to go. I want to talk to whoever was involved in the situation. Why? Because I want to get firsthand what happened. I don't want to hear 12 different versions from all these other bystanders what was happening. Okay. You want to get to the source.
Like Lisa on the coming in their classroom on the basketball court.
Yes. Yeah. So you want to get to the source.
My gosh.
So the same holds true for when teaching older kids about sources. Because I remember in my history class, prime example is I wanted to teach them about sources. So we were talking about Greece and Persia at that point. I pulled the Battle of Thermopylae and gave them 4 different accounts of the Battle of Thermopylae. And each one of those accounts, it talked about the number of Persians killed. And they had 4 different numbers. One of them went from like 100 and the other one went to like 200,000. So like, which source do you believe and why? Your source matters. So they had to learn to evaluate those sources to see if they were a reliable source. True for us today. You turn on the TV, you get a lot of information. You go on the internet. If you're getting your news from TikTok, probably not a good source, you know? So you need to evaluate your sources. So why do I think about this is because of this. Who gave us the Torah? Yah gives it. Who receives it? Moses. Where do we first see Moses? You about choked on that?
I said,
Where do we see?
Where do we first see Moses? Exodus. Oh, wait. But Genesis, all that happened before Moses. Okay.
So how did Moses do it?
So how did Moses know? Did Yah tell Moses what to write in Genesis, even though we don't see his birth until Exodus? That's a valid question. And, you know, as I was researching yesterday, I saw, I went to Bible Hub and I happened to see somebody else had put a similar question on there, which I'll link, you know, if y'all watching this, I'm going to put that in there. And there's a couple other links I'll put in the video info too, if you want to look at those. But let's look at scripture, because traditionally, some people hold the view, Genesis to Deuteronomy, Moses wrote all of it. Okay. That's the traditional point of view, that Moses wrote all of that. And then there are others that say, no, there's some discrepancies. There's some things in there. No, let's look at that. So let's go back to Exodus chapter 2 a minute. And we're going to go to verse 11. Okay. One day when Moshe was a grown man, he went out to visit his kinsmen, and he watched them struggling at forced labor. He saw an Egyptian strike a Hebrew slave, one of his kinsmen. Wait.
So personal.
Okay, wait a second. Okay. Did Moses write this? 2:11. No, Exodus. Did Moses write that? Why? Why does it not sound like it?
Because he would say,
Because he would say,
well, I was going to say it's not.
So this is somebody else telling the story. Okay. Turn to Exodus chapter 3. Let's just look at verse 1. Now Moshe was tending the sheep of Yethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, leading the flock on the far side of the desert. He came to the mountain of God, to Horeb, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a fire blazing in the middle of the bush. He looked up and saw that although the bush was flaming with fire, yet the bush was not being burned up. Did Moshe write that? Again, it's talking about him. But he's not saying, if you're writing, you'd say, one day I was tending the flock of my father-in-law and leading the flock when I came to this mountain and the angel of the Lord appeared to me. But it's not saying that. It says the angel of the Lord appeared to him. Okay. Just go over. I just flipped to chapter 6, verse 1. And Yah said to Moshe, now you will see what I'm going to do to Pharaoh. With a mighty hand, he will send them off. With force, he will drive them out of the land. So here we see Yah saying something to Moshe. But did Moshe write that?
This is in a,
It's
Another
third
person.
person. Yeah, it's still saying
Yeah,
it spoke to him, not Yah said to me.
right.
Okay. Now, all of those we're talking about Moshe in the third person, which indicates that somebody else is the writer, not Moses. And when you go through Exodus, that whole book is written that way.
Mhm.
Okay. So if we go to Leviticus. Okay, so let's go to Leviticus chapter 1. I just pulled 3 verses out of here. Chapter 1, verse 1. Yah called to Moshe and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, and he said, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any of you brings an offering to Yah, you may bring an animal of either the flock or herd or from the flock. Look at the first part. Yah called to Moshe. Okay. If we go over I skipped just pages. I just turned to a random page. Chapter 8, verse 1. Yah said to Moshe. Mhm. Okay, sorry. I'm just turning random pages is where I pulled. Yeah. Chapter 8, verse 1. Yah said to Moshe, take Aaron and his sons with him, the garments, the anointing oil, the bull for the sin offering, the 2 rams, and the basket of matzah. Again, Yah says to Moshe, not Yah says to me. Okay, let's just flip over to chapter 10. And I just pulled verse 4 just because that's where I was. Moshe called Mishael, Eltzavon, the sons of Uziel, Aaron's uncle, and told them, come up here and carry your cousins away from the front of the sanctuary to a place outside the camp. So Moshe called Mishael. Not I called. Okay. So again, all those 3 I just pulled out. If you go through the book of Leviticus and start reading that with a different view, just think about who's speaking. Is it first person or is it third person? Through Leviticus, it's all third person again. Okay. So let's go to Numbers. Okay. Numbers. And I just pulled chapter 3. Verse 1. These are the descendants of Aaron and Moshe as of the day when Yah spoke with Moshe on Mount Sinai. Neither one of them. So, Aaron didn't write it. Moshe didn't write it here because it's talking about Moshe and Aaron. Okay. I just went to chapter 9, Numbers 9, verse 4. I pulled a verse here. Moshe told the people of Israel to observe Pesach. Not I told them. So again, even in Numbers, now we don't have any in Genesis because he wasn't born in Genesis. Okay. But when we get to Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, all throughout those books, they are all third person. Okay. Now let's go to Deuteronomy. This is where our portion is. Okay. Deuteronomy 1:1. These are the words Moshe spoke to all of Israel on the far side of the Jordan.
Wow.
Is that first person?
See,
No.
That's right, yeah.
It's
I spoke.
yeah, I didn't say these are the words I spoke to all of Israel. Again, it's third person. But notice what it also says here. These are the words Moshe spoke to all of Israel on the far side of the Jordan River in the desert. Okay, wait a minute. If he's telling you it's on the far side, where's the speaker then?
First what?
That's right.
On the other side.
First what?
The speaker who wrote this, where are they then? They're on the other side. So the person that's writing this part is already crossed over into the land, but he's saying these are the words that Moshe spoke on the other side.
Yeah.
Okay. So this gives us a clue when that part was written. Okay.
Later.
It's got to be later because Moses didn't go across the Jordan. Okay. Now, is your brain spinning? What I've said about the book so far with the name of Moshe, they've been third person. Numbers, Exodus, Leviticus, all of them were all third person. We get to Deuteronomy. So far, we got third person, but there's a difference in Deuteronomy. Okay. Because when we go to Deuteronomy 1 and verse 5, there beyond the Jordan in the land of Moab, Moshe took it upon himself to expound this Torah and said, Yah spoke to us. That's first person. Yah spoke to us. So this is where he starts talking, is here in verse 6, where it says, Yah spoke to us in Horeb, and he said. Now, he's saying what Yah said, not somebody saying what Moshe said. And he said, you've lived long enough by this mountain, turning it, moving, and go up to the hill country of the Emori and all the places there in the Arabah, the hill country, the Shephelah, the Negev, and the seashore, the land of the Canaani and Lebanon, as far as the great river Euphrates. I have set this land before you. Go in and take possession of the land Yah swore to give to your ancestors, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and their descendants after them. And at that time, I told you, so this is Moshe again. At that time, I told you that you were too heavy of a burden for me to carry alone. So this is Moshe talking, and he's saying what Yah told him, but he's also saying his words. So this is where we see a difference. Deuteronomy does have Moses talking himself. Now, the first part of it, of course, was somebody else writing down where this is happening. And they were already across the Jordan. But then where Moshe really starts is in verse 6.
But if it says that Adonai spoke to us here in Horeb.
Moshe saying that this is what Yah spoke to me.
But
Yeah.
didn't he, God Yahweh was going to speak to them, and they said, no, we don't want it.
Yeah, he's just telling he's just recounting the story. This is where Moshe's recounting his story. This is his words.
His voice before
Okay,
that?
We're going to go that. We're going to talk about that
Because
before.
then they said they got scared and it was because of so much thunder and lightning.
Okay, we'll go back and look at that in a minute.
Before that.
So let's look at this. So first of all, we've got Moses actually speaking in verse 6. Okay. When we go through Deuteronomy, the thing that happens is, if I'm going to go to chapter 2, verse 1. It says, then we turned and began traveling into the desert along the road to the Sea of Suf, as Yah had said to me. And we skirted around Mount Seir for a long time. And finally, Yah said to me. So again, he's talking his own words. Deuteronomy 3, verse 23. Then I pleaded with Yah. These are his own words. Okay. All of those are first person. But if we go to chapter 5 and verse 1, notice it says, then Moshe called to all of Israel and he said to them.
It's so strange that it would be mixed.
It's mixed in, yeah. So it goes back to a scribe.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
To it, but
Yep.
I'm like, funny.
It goes back to what?
That in chapter 5, verse 1, there's a narrator, some scribe, somebody that's writing this, because it says,
Well,
did
that's what it looks like all the time.
it's going back and forth.
Describing somebody.
Yeah, there's somebody that's writing part of it, and who is writing it, we don't know.
You know,
Okay. But, you know,
Is it kind of like John, he wrote the letters, but Ava, some of them are taking it all down and carrying the letter down.
We don't-
We never know. who-
we don't know, because, okay, for a prime example, if we go over to Jeremiah, in Jeremiah chapter 1, we see that there is, somebody talking about Jeremiah's words, but then you keep going and you eventually get to where Jeremiah is actually giving his, and that we know Baruch is Jeremiah's scribe.
Right.
And he writes down some of it. So we know that this is a common thing. We think of Deuteronomy as being a book. It wasn't a book. It was a scroll, and it was just, Moses wrote down part of it. And it's just later when they were actually compiling some of this, somebody else said, okay, well, this is what Moses said, but this is, let me give you the background of what happened before this. This is who's speaking. Just like when you go and you invite somebody to come speak at a church, at a congregation or whatever, did they just walk up there on the stage and start speaking? No, they're introduced. Somebody is going to give background information. They're going to start talking about, okay, well, who this person is before they get up there. That's just what happens here. Somebody,
Associate pastor.
usually the associate pastor, yeah.
Well, in most of the times, in Moses' life, most times Joshua was always with him.
Okay,
Joshua was.
but-
But he wasn't with him when he,
Yeah, there's parts of it that it's not. So,
but for most part, from Exodus on, you hear about Joshua being with Moses all
Yeah.
the time.
But where was this written?
where was it written? That's another
Yeah.
thing.
Where
Okay.
was it written? Because it couldn't have been written on the cross, because Moses couldn't get across.
Right. And the person, and we know at the beginning, the person that wrote it was a cross on the
Yeah.
other side, because they give you that. So what I'm saying, first of all, is Deuteronomy is the only book where we have the exact words of what was happening,
Yeah.
okay, at that point in time.
It
Now,
was the first person.
a first person account. And
Yeah.
but it's not all of Deuteronomy, because
Right.
there are some parts. So you have
Right.
to really look at that, and you have to start thinking, who's speaking? Who are they speaking to? Is it a third person account? Okay. So that was just like me going back to this, what I did with my kids on the Battle of Thermopylae. One of them like, oh, well, I want to believe Herodotus because Herodotus was the first, a historian. And I'm like, yeah, but look at when this battle happened and look at when he lived. You have a person that actually lived. You have two people in that account who lived during that time period. Which one of those are you going to believe them?
Like Josephus,
Mm-hmm. So,
you know.
well, Josephus did live in the time period right
Right.
after Yeshua's death.
Right.
So even though not everything we would say is 100%,
Right.
but you would trust the validity of a lot of what he's saying because he lived during that time period right after when all that was happening, with Paul and after Yeshua's death. Okay. So that's another thing. Okay. So let's go back. There's something else that we're going to see that happens. And then I want to talk about,
You go that person down.
no, I'm going to go somewhere else first. Is
What's that?
we okay, we're going to go to Exodus chapter 16. So go ahead and turn to Exodus chapter 16
Exodus 16.
because we're going to talk about a big word.
Uh-oh. People are out.
Anachronisms. Okay. An anachronism.
Never heard.
It's,
Spell that.
Anachronism. ANACHRONISMS.
Exodus 100.
16
Exodus 16:1.
verse 35.
Anachronism.
Anachronism.
Yeah.
Okay. So an anachronism happens right here. Okay. So 1635 Exodus. The people of Israel ate manna for 40 years until they came to an inhabited land. They ate manna until they arrived at the borders of the land of Canaan. Okay. So what does that mean? It's just telling us that they ate manna for 40 years. Exodus 16:35. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Moses wrote this, they ate manna until they came to the land. Did Moses go into the land? How did he know that they were going to eat manna for 40 years, unless y'all told him. But an anachronism is things that appear out of time. Okay?
Well, the only two Joshua and Caleb.
From the, and those under 20. And then all those that were under 20. So they would have been at the most 60. So,
When they went across.
yeah. Okay. So if Moshe wrote this, how did he know that it would be 40 years? Because they ate manna until after Moses' death and after, until they crossed over the Jordan.
Kenny, I ain't told you.
Yes.
Study.
He's intent.
I'm just Googling that word anachronism.
Anachronisms, he's trying to, okay.
I want to check her out, make sure she's something.
He's checking me, yeah.
So somebody's got to say, because it says Moses said to Aaron.
That they ate it for 40 years.
And they ate it for 40 years.
Okay, so was it,
Who's,
but would it have been written during that time period then? How would you have known it was going to be 40 years?
that's what I'm saying, so how was he?
Unless it was written later.
Moshe said,
I mean,
Unless it was written later.
it almost would have Joshua or Caleb.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it was, but it doesn't say it, but almost those are the two, like Jack said, would be
Yeah.
the closest.
They've been the closest,
to
yeah.
him, because, because
Okay.
of their situation.
Let's go to another one. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 2. I'm going to go down to verse 9.
anybody online?
Okay. Yah said to me, don't be hostile toward Moab or fight with them, because I will not give you any of their land to possess, since I've already given Ar to the descendants of Lot as their territory. The Emmanim used to live there, a great and numerous people as tall as the Anakim. They are also considered Rephaim, as are the Anakim, but the Moabim called them Emnim. In Seir, the Horim used to live there, but the descendants of Esau dispossessed them and destroyed them, settling in their place. Israel did similarly in the land it came to possess, which Yah gave to them. Now get along and cross the Wadi Zered. So we crossed the Wadi Zered. Okay. So here, he's talking about not fighting with the Moab, whatever. He's talking about the Emmanim and the Rephaim. But notice verse 12. In Seir, the Horim used to live there, but the descendants of Esau dispossessed them and destroyed them, settling in their place. Well, that's okay. Just like Israel did similarly in the land it came to possess, which Yah gave to them. Wait a minute.
Mhm.
Have they entered into the land yet? They haven't even dispossessed the people in the land.
It wasn't.
Mm.
So this is written after they've crossed into the land, because it says they've already dispossessed the people in the land. They're just in Deuteronomy, he's talking about them going across the land. Moses hadn't died yet.
Here, they'd already been across the land because they
Right.
all the people.
So this is something that right there we know has to be written after the fact of them crossing into the land. Because Moses didn't bring them into the land. This doesn't happen until after Joshua brings them into the land and they fight and get rid of the
I
people.
know a lot of it's not chronological.
It's not chronological.
But
Mhm.
still, where you say, I am, he is, they are.
Right.
That's still in first, second, third person.
Yeah, you've got to look and
Still
see.
doing that.
Yeah, you still got to look and see.
Or it's not.
Yeah, you've got to see who is talking. Is
Yeah.
this Moses talking? Is this his words, or is this somebody else writing about Moses? Okay. So
Is there a problem with that?
is there a problem? Well, okay. So then it comes up to the question then, what is Torah?
Or,
The word of Yah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
If they're quoting.
Well, I don't think it's a question of so much what is Torah. It's when did Torah come about? And
and
I mean, is Torah one book or is Torah 5 books?
Yeah. Okay. So that, I mean, that's what I'm saying. You really start thinking then what exactly is Torah? Is it, we know it's the word of Yah. And okay, I'm going to come back to that because I want to go to a couple places, then we'll go there. Deuteronomy 32, verse 48.
32 and 48.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my little subtitle, if you go on and look for this video for those that are here, is Torah honest to Moses.
Are you ladies on?
No, we're recording for them.
Well, they'll be freaked out when they see this.
Exodus 32, verse 48.
Oh, Exodus.
I'm sorry, Deuteronomy 32, verse 48.
48?
Deuteronomy 32, 48. Yes. So this is going to be called Torah. We're going to be honest to Moses. Yeah, we like to say honest to Moses. And so, verse 48, that same day, Yah said to Moshe, get thee up to Arabim range to Mount Nebo in the land of Moab across from Jericho, and look out over the land of Canaan, which I'm giving to the people of Israel as a possession. And on the mountain you are ascending, you will die and be gathered to your people, just as Aaron, your brother, died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. Okay. The very first part of that, it says that same day. Well, what same day? If you go back and look before that, it is the day after Moshe wrote and read the song to the people that he did. Yes, the song back in the previous chapter that he dies. Okay. We see also talking about his death over in chapter 34. So let's go over to chapter 34 and look at verse 1. Moses ascended the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo to the summit of Pisgah across from Jericho. There Yah showed him in all the land, Gilead as far as Dan, all of Naphtali, the land of Ephraim, Manasseh, the land of Yehuda, all the way to the sea beyond, the Negev, the Arabah, including the valley where Jericho, the city of date palms, as far away as Zaor. And Yah said to him, this is the land concerning which I swore to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. So is Moshe writing this? No. Okay. Okay. Somebody else is writing this. And so this says, I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over there. So Moshe, the servant of Yah, died there in the land of Moab, as Yah had said. He was buried in the valley across from Beit Peor in the land of Moab, but no one knows to this day where his grave is. Now, wait a second. Where did he die? On a mountain. Where was he buried? In the valley. So Moshe died and buried, first of all. Okay. And in 34, he didn't really die there. He died back in 32, but they're telling it again in 34. So if he died in 32 and they retold it again in 34, who wrote about his death? And what about the rest of 33, 34 of the chapters? Who wrote those?
Well, if he died in one place on the mountain, how could he get down in the valley?
And if he died on the mountain,
they know because God said.
how did they know that he was buried in the valley if they didn't know?
Because God said no one would know where he was buried.
Yeah.
Then Joshua wrote, we didn't know he died.
Not but so far up the mountain.
Yeah. In 32, it just says Yah said to Moses, and in 34, it doesn't say Joshua went up.
He didn't go all the way up because God was told him he would come up and die.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing about it, I mean,
Yeah.
they didn't, everything wasn't written down.
Not everything was written down. That's true.
Because they could have been somebody, it just didn't write it down.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, somebody had to.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you said
Yeah.
God buried him.
Yeah.
but
And, you know,
it
it doesn't say God buried him.
Yeah.
We assume God buried him because when you look at that in Hebrew and it says, and he was buried.
Yeah.
No, you can go.
Didn't Michael and Apostle Tom disputed over Moses' body?
That is, let me see. Let's see where that is.
Yeah.
Well, let's find where that is.
I was thinking one place too because God said he didn't want to work.
It just says in Jude chapter 1, It says in Jude chapter 1, verse 9, yet Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil, disputed about the body of Moses. Durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said to the Lord, rebuke thee. Okay.
So. There.
Yeah. So that's the question. Who wrote it? Because
Who's up there with-
so some people say, okay, well, it's got to be Joshua. That Joshua wrote it because Joshua was there most of the time. Okay. Deuteronomy. Let's keep reading. We're in chapter 34.
Say a messenger followed him.
Let's look at verse 9.
Sent to write it all down. I mean, it's possible.
Okay, verse 9. Yahushua, the son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moshe had laid his hands upon him, and the people of Israel heeded him and did what Yah had ordered Moshe to do. So did Joshua write that? No, because he's
He
talking
didn't write it
about
down. Right,
Joshua.
yeah, 'cause they couldn't write it all down and go, he was talking.
So it's not him writing it there about Moses' death. It's somebody else. No, it's not Joshua here, because Joshua was written about in third person also here.
Was it Caleb?
Okay, we don't know. We don't know. That's the whole thing. We don't know who wrote. We just know that there is a narrator or a scribe or somebody.
I'm gonna set it down and God sent a messenger to follow him.
But we don't, here's the thing is we don't know who wrote that part, but we do know that first account part is only in the book of Deuteronomy. Okay. Now, we can also see another anachronism. Let's go back to Genesis 14 and 14. Now, you remember what I said when I began the first thing before we even started
Maybe.
about, I believe, Genesis through Deuteronomy. Okay. So keep that in your mind as I'm going through this, because you start thinking, well, if he didn't write it, then it's not believable. No. Okay. Genesis 14:14. When Avram heard that his nephew had been taken captive, he led out his trained men who had been born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. This is Abraham. Okay. Abraham's before they go into Egypt, before they possess the land. Okay. Yep. This is talking about Lot. Okay. This is before they possess the land. Now let's go to Joshua chapter 19. And see if you can see between these two verses the anachronism.
What's the next?
Joshua 19, verse 47. The territory of the descendants of Dan was too small for them. So the descendants of Dan went up and fought against Lashem, captured it, defeated it by the sword, took possession of it, lived there, calling Lashem Dan after their ancestors. So do you see the anachronism in Genesis 14:14? It wasn't named Dan until after Joshua and they went into the land, and the tribe of Dan takes the city Lashem and renames it Dan. But in Abraham's day, it says Abraham went after Lot all the way up to Dan, but Dan didn't exist then.
Was that added in?
It had to have been written later in time
Yeah.
when it was referred to as Dan.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's like,
And that's a much later. Yeah. So this is like
So
this,
that would not include Joshua to be,
right.
okay.
Okay. So, and then you think about this. Okay. You think about this. for example, today, if we're talking about, Mesopotamia, we've heard that term, whatever, but we're talking to people where they are and we're going, yeah, Abraham actually was from Iraq. We would know Iraq, but
Right.
if somebody in biblical times would not say Iraq because it wasn't called Iraq then.
Right. Oh, my goodness.
Okay, does that make sense? This is why I said we read it and we don't know the history, and we're thinking with today's mind. That's just like, okay, what is the country? Okay, wait a minute. Let me look at I got to look this up because I don't remember.
While you're looking that up, I'm gonna throw something out. Okay, when Joshua crossed over by himself, because Moses just died, Joshua crossed over, going into the Canaan, but he had to conquer all the lands, and then, but the three tribes that was supposed to stay behind, Dan, Manasseh, what was the other? Reuben was to stay behind,
Yeah.
but they were sworn to go with them to fight, but they wanted to stay and get conquer the cities there and, start building for their wives and families. They renamed all of them before they went over.
Mhm. Okay, so
They
here,
got different names.
yeah, they had different names.
Two
Yeah,
of
they
them
conquered.
named after the ones that went across.
Okay, so this is like, because most of us are older here, we remember our more recent history of World War II, and we talk about Czechoslovakia. But we say that to kids today, and they have no clue what Czechoslovakia is because it doesn't exist today. It's Czech Republic or either Slovakia, but you don't have a Czechoslovakia today. Okay, so that's like, talking to people today, most of the young generation, they have no clue what that is. So, okay.
What's it called today?
Czech Republic,
Okay.
or, sometimes they use the term Czechia or whatever to refer to both of them, but it's actually two different countries today. It's Czech Republic and Slovakia. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so here's something else. When you examine the other books of Torah compared to Deuteronomy, there are differences. Some differences are seen like, well, we're just given more detail or less detail, but others seem contradictory. So this is why I said to show you something how I study is sometimes, especially when I'm reading a passage and I'm like, oh, this also happened somewhere else. Let's go read it in this other book where it happens. So it's like called like parallel reading or horizontal reading, where you're actually reading the same event in two different books, like in Exodus and in Deuteronomy. Okay. So here's another one. Exodus 24. And this goes back to your question. Exodus 24 and verse 9. We're going to do a parallel reading or a horizontal reading, whatever you want to call it here. Exodus 24, verse 9. You got your spot? Okay. Moshe, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 elders went up, and they saw the God of Israel, and under his feet was something like the sapphire stone pavement, as clear as the sky itself. He did not reach out his hand against these devils of Israel. On the contrary, they saw God, even as they were eating and drinking. Yah said to Moshe, come up to me on this mountain and stay there, and I will give you these stone tablets of the Torah and the mitzvah, which I have written on them so that I can teach them to my people, so you can teach them. So this is talking about him going up on the mountain, and this is what they saw.
Somebody else
Okay.
wrote this.
Okay, wait a second.
Well,
Hold your spot. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 4, and we're going to read the parallel passage on this one.
Deuteronomy.
4.
but verse 13
Mm-hmm.
in Exodus 24, and Moses rode up and his minister Joshua,
Mm-hmm.
and Moses went up unto the mountain.
Yep. Okay. So Deuteronomy. We're going to look at Deuteronomy
Okay.
4, and I'm going to start in verse 7. For what great nation is there that has God as close to them as Yah our Elohim is? Whenever we call on him, what great nation is there that has laws and rulings, just as this entire Torah that I'm setting before you today? Only be careful and watch yourselves diligently as long as you live, so that you won't forget what you saw with your own eyes. So these things won't vanish from your hearts. Rather, make them known to your children and to your grandchildren. The day you stood before Yah, your Elohim, at Mount Horeb, when Yah said to me, so first person, gather the people to me, and I will make them hear my very words, so that they will learn to hold me in awe as long as they live on the earth, so that they will teach their children. You approached and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain blazed with fire to the heart of heaven, out with darkness, clouds, and a thick mist. And then Yah spoke to you out of the fire. You heard the sound of words, but saw no shape. There was only a voice. He proclaimed his covenant to you, which he ordered you to obey the 10 words, and he wrote them on 2 stone tablets. So in Deuteronomy, what did they see? You heard the words, but you saw no shape. There was only a voice. Exodus, what did they see? We saw his feet with something like a sapphire stone pavement. So did they see his feet? Or did they see nothing? Which one do we believe? That's the question. Did they see it or not? Because Deuteronomy says they didn't see anything, that you saw no shape. And then in Exodus, it says we saw him, his feet. We saw, So that's a shape.
Well,
With the verse 10,
Mm-hmm.
and they saw the Elohim Israel.
Yeah,
They saw.
that's what they said.
They
Okay.
didn't say they just saw his feet. They said they
They saw him and they saw under his feet. Okay.
But I thought you couldn't.
Okay.
It says
Yeah.
you can't see God.
Yep.
It says no one has ever seen God.
So here is, like I said, there's a discrepancy in the parallel reading here. So which one is it?
okay, it's like if you see me, say I'm out in a bright daylight sun, and you see me, you seeing the whole of me. You see me.
Mm-hmm.
But my shadow there, you only see the shape of it. You don't see.
But he said you
nothing
saw no shape.
You see nothing in your shadow. It's a blank.
But you see a shape, you see an outline. And he says you saw no shape. Because when you go back to Deuteronomy, it says you only heard the sound of his words, but you saw no shape. And then it goes on to tell them about don't make an image because you saw no shape. And then Exodus says they saw it. They saw his feet. They saw it. So here's another question. Which source would hold more value?
Well,
Look at the 2 sources. Don't think about what you want to think. Look just literary at the 2 sources. What is Exodus? First or third person?
It's third person.
Third person. What's Deuteronomy?
First.
First person. So whose source then, based on that, would be more reliable?
yeah,
First person.
The first person.
It has to be.
yeah.
Has to be, because if somebody saw Yah and then years later says, I heard Yah,
Mhm.
well, you'd have to do the first person.
Right.
You'd have to.
Right.
Well, the children of Israel saw the fire on the mountain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, according to Exodus, but it says you saw no shape. You saw the mountain in Deuteronomy. You saw the mountain blaze with fire.
Even though he saw the backside of Yah, but he never saw him face to face. Because remember he said,
Mhm.
I put you in the cleft of the rock.
But that's also where? What book? Third person.
Yeah.
See, do you see where I'm going with this? When you start having these contradictory things, We
Well,
use
yeah.
all of this.
First person is actually from God. Anything after.
That's
that
just like if, you know,
is
if
somebody
you,
else telling.
yeah, that's just like you have an experience with God and you telling the story, and then, somebody who is down the road sees something happen and they're telling the story of it. So who's going to have the truer version? You that experienced it, or someone who's telling about you
Yeah.
experiencing it? Yeah. So that's why I said, when you look at these and you start evaluating your sources, because we don't think about the Bible written that way. We look at it as a religious document. Yes, it is about our faith, but it is a treaty that was written, and it is written differently than what we, okay, for example, I ain't gonna say a specific example, but I'm gonna say sometimes we read verses as a promise from God when it is not a promise from God. It was wisdom literature.
And it wasn't a promise exactly.
Or we read something, because wisdom literature is like a moral. When we think about, Aesop's fables, when you're talking to, trying to teach kids a lesson. So you teach them about, these animals and this was happening. You're trying to teach them a lesson. What is a prime example of wisdom literature? Proverbs.
Yes.
Song of Solomon.
Yeah.
But sometimes we take those verses in Proverbs and see, he's promised us this. No, he's not promised you that. He's trying to teach you a lesson here, that if you live this way, such and such, you're bound to have more favor. But if you don't, it's not a promise that, oh, I'm never going to have problems. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So that's just an odd example, but that's it. Okay.
I heard Mitch ask one time, he was talking to this other Robinson or something. He said, have you heard from God directly? Asking anybody.
Mhm.
And right? He said, was that a promise to you? Or something?
Mhm.
That's most of them read it. And he said, did he say it was specifically for you? Or was he just saying, like, having in a covenant, if we do this, he said, unless you hear God tell you specifically that it is for you,
Yeah.
then it is for you. But if you just hear God's voice, it could be, something else.
Well, one thing about Yah is never gonna override his word, what it says. If he's just speaking to you about something, it is pertaining to the word to back it up.
Yeah.
What he's talking about.
But it could be for the nation,
it's gonna be backed up.
or something, for the nation, you pray
Yeah.
for the nation, but it's not specifically like, if God speaks to me specifically saying this is for you.
Yeah. Okay. So you're like saying, just give a
Yeah.
specific word for you. Yeah. Okay. So look down in Deuteronomy 4 and verse 15. This is where I said, if you kept reading, this is what he warns them. He says, therefore, watch out for yourselves, since you did not see a shape of any kind on that day that y'all, Deuteronomy 4:15. Therefore, watch out for yourselves, since you did not see a shape of any kind on that day that Yah spoke to you in Horeb from the fire. So he warns them and he tells them, because you saw nothing, don't make these images, because you saw nothing there. Because what would happen?
Wasn't.
Well,
Okay.
what about all these images everybody
Yep.
has in their house? Supposed to be of Jesus and
Yep. And that's
angels and everything. He says, don't do that.
Yep. He says, don't do it. Okay. So here's another one.
Don't do it. I mean, come.
Yep.
No.
Let's go back and look at this one, because you remember what happened with the bronze serpent. They ended up worshiping the bronze serpent. Okay. Even though that he told them, yes, you're going to make this serpent and you're going to hold it up. But it wasn't that they were looking to that serpent for healing. It's you're looking to Yah, and this is the means that he's going to do that. But they turned it into an idol of worship. Okay. So let's go back to Exodus 34.
Before you go back in.
I told you we're going back because we're analyzing 34. We're analyzing some stuff here. So this is where I said,
I thought I educated myself a lot before Lisa was born.
this is where you have to go to parallel passage. Okay.
It's gonna
She
be
was
10
educated
pages.
me.
Oh, yeah.
So Exodus 34, and I'm gonna go to verse 1.
34:1.
Yep.
Go.
Yah says to Moshe, cut yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first ones, and I will inscribe on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets which you broke. Be ready by morning. In the morning, you are to ascend Mount Sinai and present yourself to me on the top of the mountain. Okay. Now, if you keep reading on down, and I'm going to skip down to verse 27. Yah said to Moshe, all this is Yah said to Moshe, third person. Write these words down because they are the terms of the covenant that I've made with you and Israel. Moshe was there with Yah for 40 days and 40 nights during the time which he neither ate food nor drank water. Yah wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 words. Now, wait a second. I'm going to read this again to you and listen carefully.
Something's right in there.
Okay, listen carefully. Yah said to Moshe, cut 2 tablets of stone like the first ones, and I will inscribe, Yah, will inscribe on the tablets that were there on the first tablets which you broke. Be ready by morning, and in the morning you are to ascend Mount Sinai, present yourself to me on top of the mountain. So Exodus 34, verse 27. And Yah said to Moshe, write down these words because they are the terms of the covenant that I had made with you and Israel. And Moshe was there with Yah for 40 days and 40 nights, during which time he neither ate food nor drank. And Yah wrote on the tablets the word of the covenant, the 10 words. Now, wait a second. Yah wrote on the tablets the first set and the second set. What? Why it doesn't say Moshe wrote. I mean, but look at what it does say here. What is Moses writing?
What is what?
Covenant.
I was reading.
Okay.
Order.
Uh-huh. So Moshe's told to write down these words, but Yah wrote the 10 words on the tablet. So what were the words that Moshe wrote down? The Torah. Okay. So let's go to Deuteronomy 31, which tells us. Deuteronomy 31, verse 9. Then Moshe wrote down this Torah and gave it to the Kohanim, the descendants of Levi, who carried the ark of the covenant of Yah, and to all of the leaders of Israel. Moshe gave them these orders at the end of every 7 years during the festival of Sukkot, in the year of Shemitah, when all Israel have come to appear in the presence of Yah at the place where you choose. You are to read this Torah before all of Israel so that they can hear.
Yes.
Okay. What Moshe wrote was given to the priest, specifically the Kohathites, because he tells them, you're going to put it beside the Ark of the Covenant, not in the Ark of the Covenant, beside the Ark of the Covenant. And in the Hebrew, it is mitzad, which is beside. Okay, not in. Okay. Okay, wait a minute. And this that he wrote was to be read every 7 years. Okay, but now wait a minute. 31, 9, we just read through 11. Is that first person or third person? Third.
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody else is writing this, not Moses. Okay, go down to verse 24. Moshe kept writing the words of this covenant in a book until he was done. And when he finished, he gave these orders to the Leviim who carried the ark with the covenant of Yah. And he said, take this book of the Torah and put it next to the ark with the covenant of Yah, so that it can be there as a witness against you.
On that one book.
Okay, so
And
what is 31:9? Moshe wrote this Torah. Was it in the ark?
Well,
No, it's beside the ark. What's in the ark?
Is that the ones God wrote?
With the tablets.
Yeah,
Okay, so what's on the two tablets?
that Moshe wrote,
No, Moses didn't write the tablets,
or wrote, that God wrote,
the 10 words.
yeah.
So if we go back to Deuteronomy and we're comparing that passage and then what it says in Exodus 34, we see that Moses went up on the mountain. He got the first tablets. Yah wrote him. He came back down. He broke them. He goes back up. Yah writes the second one, but he also tells Moses to write down the Torah.
So he told him to write.
Okay. But what's the Torah?
Mhm.
We just already looked at Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, and they were all third person, and Moses didn't write that.
Was it Deuteronomy?
wait,
What had to be?
I mean, do,
It had to be part of Deuteronomy, okay? So the writing that Moshe did was not placed in the ark, but next to it, okay? And it said in verse 26 that what Moses wrote is going to be a witness against you. Okay?
So isn't all Deuteronomy the summary of the whole?
No. That's what we're taught, that it is a second telling of it. Okay, it's okay. Well, that's the it's not.
Talmud.
Mhm. So when we look at this, we're taught that it's a second retelling of everything.
But it doesn't.
Okay, right? That's what we're taught, that it's a retelling of everything. And where do they get that from? They get it from that verse that says that this is the Mishneh Torah, is what it says in Hebrew, which is a copy of the Torah. Okay. Now, I'm going to come back to that in a minute, because what we just said here, and you mentioned a minute ago, that in Deuteronomy 31, it says Moshe wrote down this Torah. Okay. That phrase in Hebrew is HaTorah or Hazeh Torah, this Torah. Okay. Depends on feminine or masculine if you're saying it.
what would that be? Talking about a singular event?
Okay. Remember, Torah means instruction or teaching, which by saying this Torah sort of implies there's another one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But another one is not necessarily a witness against them. The one that Moses wrote is going to be the one that's kept in the holy place that is to be the witness against them.
Yeah, because that's the one, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
hmm.
So when did Deuteronomy 31 take place? Let's go back up to verse 7. And it says, then Moses summoned Joshua, and in the sight of all of Israel said to him, be strong, be bold, for you're going with this people into the land that Yah swore to their ancestors that he would give to them. You will be the one causing them to inherit it, but Yah is the one who will go ahead of you. He will be with you. You will neither fall. He will neither fail you nor abandon you. So don't be afraid or be downhearted. Okay. So right before Moses wrote this Torah, we see the choosing or the commissioning of Joshua. Okay. And this is where we've said it earlier, is we tend to read the Bible like we read a book. We tend to read it like it's a narrative. Everything happened in Genesis first, and then we go to Exodus, and then Exodus happened, and then we go to Numbers, and then, finally we get to Deuteronomy. Okay. But that's not the way it's written. It's not written chronologically, right, telling a story because the way it's written, sometimes it's giving us events that are happening simultaneously in different places. So this is where we're going to look at another parallel. Okay. So we're going to go to Numbers 27. and we're going to go down to verse 18, and we're going to start here, and we're going to read the two passages side by side or together. Okay.
27, not 12.
Numbers 27, verse 18. So I'm going to start. Yah said to Moshe, take Yehoshua, the son of Nun, a spiritual man, and lay your hands on him. Put him in front of Eleazar the Cohen, the whole community, and commission him in their sight. Delegate to him some of your authority so that the entire community of Israel will obey him. He is to present himself to Eleazar the Cohen, who is to find out by means of the Urim what Yah's will is for Joshua's decisions. Then at his word they will go out, and at his word they will come in, both he and the people of Israel with him, the whole community. And Moshe did as Yah had ordered him. He took Yehoshua, put him before Eleazar the Cohen, the whole community, laid his hands on him, commissioned him as Yah had said through Moshe. Okay, so that passage is talking about the commissioning or the choosing, the giving Joshua the authority here. Okay. It's in third person. Yah said to Moshe. Okay. Now we're going to go to Deuteronomy, and we're going to read the same passage about him commissioning Joshua. Deuteronomy 31.
Is this the only place right here where you just read it in verse 21, where he is to present himself to Eleazar the Cohen, who is to find out by means of the Urim and think,
Where it talks about him commissioning. Yeah.
That's the only time I remember seeing that part.
Yeah.
31,
Verse 14. And Yah said to Moshe, the time is coming for you to die. Summon Yehoshua and present yourselves in the tent of meeting so that I can commission him. Moshe and Yehoshua presented themselves in the tent of meeting. And Yah appeared to them in a column of cloud. The column of cloud stood above the entrance to the tent. And Yah said to Moshe, you are about to sleep with your ancestors, but this people will get up and offer themselves as prostitutes to foreign gods of the land which they're going. When they are with those gods, they will abandon me and break my covenant which I've made with them. Then my anger will flare up, and I will abandon them and hide my face from them, and they will be devoured, and many calamities and troubles will come upon them. And they will ask, haven't these calamities come upon us because our God isn't here with us? But I will be hiding my face from them because all of the evil they have done in turning to their other gods. Therefore, write this song for yourselves and teach it to the people of Israel. Have them learn it by heart so that this song can be a witness for me against the people of Israel. For when they brought them into the land that I swore to their ancestors, flowing with milk and honey, and they've eaten their fill, grown fat, and turned to other gods, serving them and despising me, and broken my covenant, then after many calamities and troubles have come upon them, this song will testify before them as a witness, because their descendants were still reciting it and will not have forgotten it. For I know how they think even now, even before I brought them into the land which I swore. So Moshe wrote this song the same day, and he taught it to the people of Israel. And Yah also commissioned Yehoshua the son of Nun with these words, be strong and full of courage. You are to bring the people of Israel into the land about which I swore to them, and I will be with you. Moshe kept writing the words of this Torah in a book until he was done. And when he finished, Moshe gave these to the Leviim who carried the ark and the covenant of Yah, and said, take this book, put it next to the ark of the covenant of Yah so it can be there as a witness against you. So look at what it said, that the same day that Yehoshua was commissioned, he wrote this song, finished the Torah, wrote it till the end, and then gave it to the priest. And then what happens?
Put it out.
They put it next to the ark, and then Moses is called up to the mountain to die.
Yeah.
But wait a second. We have
Probably not.
no. He kept writing. But what was he writing? Was he writing Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy? No. Or was he only writing part of Deuteronomy? Because that part that we just read right there, is that first person or third person? Third person.
Third.
Yeah. He only wrote part of this. So
Still You're saying this book.
Yeah, this book. Okay. Now, how, we know we already read that in chapter 32, he dies. But we also have 33, 34 that happen after he's dead. So how did he write those chapters if he had already died? Okay. So what I said, I'm not questioning the authenticity of the scripture. I'm not questioning, whether it's true or not. Yes, I believe it. I'm not questioning its inspiration. Yes, I believe it was inspired. I believe, Genesis through Deuteronomy. But the only part that I'm questioning is what is exactly the Torah, according to the scripture, that Moses wrote? And it was supposed to be read every 7 years, and that was going to be a witness against them. Because if we go to other references outside of the Torah, we see that phrase, this Torah, HaTorah Hazeh or HaTorah Hazot, is also written in Joshua. In Joshua 1:8, it says, you are to keep this book of the Torah on your lips, meditate it day and night, so that you will take care to act according to everything written in it. Then your undertakings will prosper and you will succeed.
And that's the.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And Joshua 8:34.
One is supposed to be read 7 years.
Every 7 years. Yep.
So how does he keep it before him and meditate on it day and night if it ain't read but one time?
The year, 7 years. Yep.
How does he do that?
Yep.
And-
That's a good question.
And they give us,
Yeah.
people give us grief for not reading the Bible every day,
Yeah.
and yet here.
Well, because they didn't have books, that they had they didn't have books like we have. They had the scroll here. And it says, well, how did they do that? When you go back to, even like which I only see a few episodes of The Chosen, but even a few of those, how they taught them. How did they do it? You had one person that had read it that would give them that verse, and then they would memorize certain verses or they memorize certain passages. That's how they would meditate. How do you meditate on it? You have to know and be able to listen to it.
After they crossed over and Joshua conquered the land, now Moshe was dead, the book that he wrote is beside the ark.
Right.
Joshua had to get one of the priests to read.
Right. The priest would be,
He had to get the book out for Joshua to read.
Right.
In front of everybody.
Right.
7 years. Joshua.
Or the priest would read it.
Well, yeah, and Joshua settled, the others settled. the
Yeah.
others some was still back across Jordan, remember Manasseh
Yeah.
and all them stayed over there.
But they would have to come up every 7 years for Sukkot.
And did God supernaturally give him the wisdom of it?
Yeah.
I mean, but what in the Hebrew, when they say this Torah,
Yes.
is that in the Hebrew, is that always a singular word?
Yeah. I'm going to go through. Yes. And I actually made a chart. Let me find it right here.
Don, I'm like you. It's good to have the video.
Share my life.
Okay. So where's it? So this is what I did. I went through.
Like this.
I screwed it right.
Yeah.
And
I'll turn it around in just a second. Let me just share my screen here. So for the video, so that you can see this first. Okay. So I actually made this chart and I went from the way that these verses that were called. And Deuteronomy 1:5 is called this Torah. Okay. Hazot HaTorah. In Deuteronomy 30:10 is talking about this book of the Torah. So anything that had the phrase this book of the Torah, which is HaSefer HaTorah Hazeh. In Joshua 8:32, it's called the Torah of Moses, okay, which is HaTorah Moshe. And then in Joshua 24:26, it's called the Torah of God or the Torah of Yah. So I went through and I started looking at every place that just had that phrase in the Hebrew. Okay. So, and I made a chart so that you can see it. Let me turn it around. Let me pause the video just a second. I'm going to show you
When was the
guys.
last time? Here, when I asked
Wait a second. I ended up stopping. I did not go through all of the versions in Nehemiah and everything. I ended up stopping there, but that's just
So when you had the Ark of the Covenant, was you saying then they had the first 4 books in the Ark and only the book in the outside?
no, I did not say
That's
that.
not what you saying.
No, I said that the stone tablets were in the Ark
Okay.
of the Covenant. Yes.
Yeah, got it. I just want to make sure.
Okay.
What you're saying.
Now, here's where we get to the next part. Because
this is the last.
why is this important? Where does it belong? I mean, why is this, so important? And then what about things that have, okay, let's just go here. Let's go to 2 Kings. And this passage is one of the most important ones, I think. 2 Kings chapter 22 and verse 8 is where I'm going to start.
22:8.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
So 2 Kings 22 and verse 8. Hilkiyahu, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, said to Shaphan, the secretary, I have found the scroll of the Torah in the house of God. Well, didn't they have it the whole time?
Well, there it is right there. Okay, just close the book.
Okay. Hilkiyahu gave the scroll to Shaphan, who read it. Wait a minute. Then Shaphan, the secretary, went back to the king and gave the king this report. Your servants has poured out money found in the house and handed over to the people supervising the work in the house of Yah. And Shaphan, the secretary, also told the king, Hilkiyahu, the Kohen Gadol, gave me a scroll. And then Shaphan read it aloud before the king. After the king had heard what was written in the scroll of the Torah, he tore his clothes. Then the king issued this order to Hilkiyahu, the Kohen. Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, Ahor, the son of Mikyahu, Shaphan, the secretary, and Azariah, the king's servant, go and consult Yah for me, for the people and all of Yehuda in regard to what is written in the scroll which has been found. For Yah must be furious with us, since our ancestors did not listen to the words written in the scroll and didn't do everything that was written there.
Oh my God.
Now,
Okay.
is this the book that Moshe wrote?
I think this is the scroll that Moses told them to put beside the Ark of the Covenant. And it was lost. It was lost supposedly.
And he was,
But why?
And he was upset
Because
they saw the truth.
Okay, why? Okay, wait a minute. I'm gonna go back to why would he be so upset? Okay, I'm gonna go somewhere else. No, Nehemiah chapter 8.
Yeah.
Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 2.
This is why I pay good money. Here it is.
Okay, chapter 8, verse 2.
Please put Emma.
N-E-H.
Because if we was in the church, we was
Okay.
picking up an offering.
What chapter?
Chapter 8, verse 2. Ezra, the Cohen, brought the Torah before the assembly. Now, wait a second. Ezra brought the Torah before the assembly, which consisted of men and women and all the children old enough to understand. It was the first day of the 7th month, and facing the open space in front of the water gate, he read it from it to the men, the women, and the children who could understand from early morning until noon. And all the people listened attentively to the scroll of the Torah. So we see after it's found in Ezra's time that it is actually read out loud to the people. But look how long it took them to read it. From early morning until noon. So if you are reading Genesis 1:1 through Deuteronomy 34, can you read it in that short amount of time. So there is a Hebrew reading team out of Louisiana that reads the Torah out loud in Hebrew, and it's recorded. You can go online, you can listen to it, whatever, but it's all in Hebrew. It's not in English. But they do Genesis 1 all the way through Deuteronomy. Do you know how long, if you sit there and you watch the recording, how long it's going to take you to do that?
6 hours.
Over 20 hours in Hebrew. Okay. So if they did it from morning until midday, could they have read all of Genesis through? No. So we know they didn't read the whole thing. So what were they reading? Had to have been
Song of Moses.
the scroll of the Torah
That scared us so bad.
that would have been a smaller document, which I think is probably just Moses's words from Deuteronomy. And you know, when you look at outside the Torah, we have that phrase Sefer HaMoshe, the book of, in Ezra 6 and 18, it says they installed the Kohanim in their divisions and the Leviim with their orders for the service of God as it was written in the book of Moshe. In Nehemiah 13, I'll just read this. It says 13 and 1, it was also at that time that they were reading in the scroll of Moshe that it was found that no Ammonite or Moabite are to enter into the assembly of God, because they did not supply the people of Israel with food and water, but hired Balaam to go against them and put a curse on them, although God was turned their curse into a blessing. Now, wait a second. In in Nehemiah 13, it says they were reading from the scroll of Moses, where it was found that no Ammonite or a Moabite can enter into the assembly of God. Where is that found? It is not found in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. It is only found in Deuteronomy 23 and verse 4. That command is only in Deuteronomy. So can it be a retelling of what already happened? Because Deuteronomy 23 verse 4 says no Ammonite or Moabite are to enter into the assembly of Yah, nor may any of his descendants down to the 10th generation ever. That is nowhere else in the books Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, or Numbers.
So after he wrote it, and it was put or later,
Okay, so
in Joshua's life, it was lost.
So we're gonna see. Okay, so I'm gonna go. Where did it go? Okay, so wait a minute. I'm gonna go. Where did it go in just a minute? Let me finish up this part. 2 Chronicles 25 and verse 1, and this is what it says. Yahu was 25 years old, and he began his reign. He ruled for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoaddan from Jerusalem, and he did what was right was from Yah's perspective, but not wholeheartedly. As soon as he had the kingdom firmly in his control, he put to death the servants of his father, who had assassinated his father, the king. But he did not put to death the children. Rather, he acted according to what was written in the Torah, what was written in the Torah, in the scroll of Moshe, as Yah ordered when he said, fathers do not die for the children, nor the children die for their fathers, as every person will die for his own sin. That is only written in Deuteronomy. Okay. But notice here, it is called the Torah and the scroll of Moshe. Okay. In Chronicles 35 and 12. They removed the portions to be burned in order to give them to the divisions of the clan of the ordinary people to present to Yah as it was written in the scroll of Moshe. So again, we got the scroll of Moshe. It's also called the Torah of Moshe. Okay. So I've got those verses in that chart about the Torah of Moshe. So in all those verses, they reference the same document as being the Torah of Moshe, the scroll of Moshe, and this Torah. And it's all the same document. So when it says Moshe wrote the Torah, I believe Moshe wrote the Torah. But where I diverge is what is technically the Torah then? I believe that it's what is shown in Deuteronomy. But the broadest sense of the word Torah means instruction or teaching. So that could also include the first 5 books. It also can include the Brit Hadashah.
And didn't Yahweh command him to write this? in
And
the
Yah
book?
told him to write it.
Told him to put it.
Right. So
that
I did.
means it's very important.
Right. And so I did another chart because there are a few verses, and I'll turn this around so you can see. There are a few verses where Yah commands specifically Moshe to write certain things. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are certain places where he tells him, you write this down, you write this down. Okay. So, and one of the things he's told to write is a song. He's also told to write the travel itinerary or all the stops that they went on okay. So, and so that happens in Numbers 33, but it also happens in Deuteronomy, and they differ. They're different.
Don't you think the crunch of the whole thing, when you come down to it, you got the evidence of how this is as far as Deuteronomy being the book.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the number one thing, because you got the first 4 books,
Yeah.
third person,
Right.
Deuteronomy first.
Okay.
So to me, who you gonna believe?
Right.
Who you gonna see? Are you gonna believe Eddie said it? Or are you gonna believe
First person.
Yeah.
Yah said it?
Okay. So
And
I
that's what comes out.
mentioned Jeremiah because this is where we can see a scribe written about in Jeremiah. In Jeremiah 1:1, it says, these are the words of Yirmiyahu, the son of Hilkiyahu. Wait a second. Who was Hilkiyahu? The one who found the scroll.
Wow.
So Jeremiah's
Oh.
father is the priest that found the scroll in Josiah's day.
Wow.
Okay. Yes.
Wow.
Okay. In verse 1, it says, one of the Kohanim living in Anatote in the territory of Benjamin, the word of Yah came to him during the days of Yeshayahu, the son of Ammon, the king of Yehuda, in the 13th year of its reign. It also came during the days of Joachim, the son of Yoshiyahu, the king of Yehuda, continuing until the 11th year of Zedekiah, the son of Yoshiyahu, the king of Yehuda, right up until the time Jerusalem was carried away into captivity in the 5th month. So this gives us the historical facts about him, but it's written in third person.
So
It's not Jeremiah writing that there, but it's telling us who's going to speak in this book.
So they found that right before they went to the captive?
Yes.
Boy, that's a coincidence.
Okay.
isn't it?
Yep. Okay. So if you go to Jeremiah, Jeremiah 1:4, here is the word that Yah came to me.
She's reading.
Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I separated you for myself. I've appointed you to be a prophet to the nations. So then we start seeing Yah talking to Jeremiah, and we have this first person count. But the introduction of Jeremiah is done by a scribe. Okay. In Jeremiah 36:4, it says, so Yirmiyahu summoned Baruch, the son of Neriah, and Baruch wrote down a scroll at Yirmiyahu's dictation, all the words that Yah had said to him.
Is this the Jeremiah
That's Jeremiah.
that the Lord called that he
The prophet.
knew him?
Yeah, that's what I just read.
And he told
Yes.
him, I knew you way before. in the
So
and
Baruch was,
they called us.
yeah, so Jeremiah was a priest. He's from the priestly line because his father was the priest that found the scroll, but he was also a prophet. And this Jeremiah didn't write the whole book of Jeremiah. Baruch wrote part of it, but we do see Jeremiah's own words in that. Now, going back to the whole issue of Deuteronomy not being a second retelling, because out of the 613 commands, there are over 200 just listed in Deuteronomy. Okay. There, if you look at the parashas, there are 2 in Deuteronomy 12, There are 2 in Devarim, 12 in Parsha et Hanan, 8 in Ekev, 55 in Re'eh, 41 in Shoftim, 74 in Ki Tiseh, 6 in Ki Tavo, 2 in Beilek, and there's none in Hazenu. So in those portions, that's a breakdown of how many are in each portion. Now, here's a big one. What's the greatest command? Okay, if that's the greatest command, Yeshua says it's the greatest command, would it not be in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy?
You would think.
It is only found in one book, in Deuteronomy.
Hey, close the book.
What about,
Why would it not be?
it's not in the other books? Nowhere. I Googled, and not Googled, I went in my Bible program and put love God. It is nowhere in any of those other books. What about the command to walk in his ways? Okay. Loving Yah, to love Yah or love God, is found 11 times in Deuteronomy. Walk in his ways is only found in Deuteronomy 7 times. Fear Yah.
Oh, God. Now tell me it's not in nothing but Deuteronomy.
It's used 4 times in Leviticus, but every time it's used in Leviticus is, if you don't do this command, you better do this command because you fear him. But it's because
It's laid
Yeah.
up with the.
every other time it is used 18 times in Deuteronomy, though,
Why?
about fearing Yah.
Gosh, my
Okay. What about
bugger.
when the scroll of Moses was found in 2 Kings, and we read that? Remember what the king did? So, which is a sign of mourning. And he said, God should be furious with us because we didn't do his commands. What, the commands about the king, about not marrying all these wives, not acquiring all this gold, not having all these horses, is only found in Deuteronomy. It is not found in Genesis,
So
Exodus,
this
Leviticus.
is the complete word is in Deuteronomy, first person.
Mhm.
That's what it's got, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it's gotta be, because the others, it's not in the others.
So,
Not there.
why is this important? Remember what Moshe wrote was to be placed beside the ark. Okay, now, and remember what we read earlier in 2 Kings about, he says, I found this scroll. And, the king says, Yah must be furious with us because our ancestors didn't listen to what was written in this scroll. And it concerns us. Okay, I want to go to 2 Chronicles 34. I'm almost done. 2 Chronicles 34.
You're still being recorded.
Yes, I'm still recording. And verse 8. 2 Chronicles 34 and verse 8. In the 18th year of his reign, after he had cleansed the house, he sent Shaphan, the son of Yahu, Masiera, the governor of the city, and Yokach, the son of Yohaz, the recorder, to repair the house of Yah. They went to Hilyaku, the Kohen Gadol, and handed over to him the money that had been brought into the house of Yah, which the Leviim had guarded the doors and had collected them from Manasseh, Ephraim, the rest of Israel, and all of Yehuda and Benjamin. And they returned to Jerusalem. They gave it to the supervisors of the work being done in the house of Yah and all those doing the work of the house of Yah, and used it to repair and restore the house. That is, they gave it to the carpenters, the construction workers, to purchase work, stone, timber for cross beams, roof beams. So the king is repairing Yah's house. Okay. The men did the work faithfully. Their supervisors were Yahat, Obadiah, the Leviim, the descendants of the Ma'ari, the Zechariah, Meshulam, the descendants of the Kahanim, the give instruction, and the Leviim, and all who could accompany with the singing with musical instruments. They supervised those carrying the loads and everyone doing any kind of work. There were also Leviim who were secretaries, officials, and gatekeepers. While bringing out the money that had been brought into the house of Yah, Yahu, the Cohen, found the scroll of the Torah of Yah given to Torah that of Yah given by Moshe. Hilyahu said to Shaphan, I found the scroll in the Torah of the house of Yah. Hilyahu gave the scroll to Shaphan. Shaphan, the secretary, brought the scroll to the king. Turning to the king, he gave them this report. Your servants are doing everything you ordered them to do. They poured out the money found in the house of Yah, handed it over to the supervisors. Then Shaphan, the secretary, told the king, gave the scroll, read it to me, read it aloud. And after the king heard, he tore his clothes. Okay, so again, this is another account. So Hilyahu was Jeremiah's dad. He found the scroll. He gave it to Shaphan, who read it to the king. The king was Josiah. Josiah mourned, repented, said we weren't doing what we were supposed to do. So, and like I said, so what was written in Deuteronomy that was not written in the other books were a lot of those rules about the king, all the commands about the king, about loving God, fearing him. All those were not written in other books. So if the scroll or the Torah of Moshe was found in King Josiah's day, when was it lost and how? That's what Eddie asked me. So I started looking, and this is what I found. In 1 Kings 14 and 25. Remember, after Solomon's death, the kingdom split. Jeroboam and Rehoboam took over, and you had northern kingdom and southern kingdom. Okay. Verse 25, it says, in the 5th year of King Rehoboam, Shishak, the king of Egypt, attacked Jerusalem. He took the treasures in the house of Yah and the treasures in the royal palace. He took everything, including all the gold shields that Solomon had made. Okay. So after Solomon's death, the kingdom split, northern and southern kingdom. We see the kingdom of Egypt attacking Jerusalem and coming in and taking the treasures that were in the temple. But remember, Moses's scroll was to be kept beside the ark. What we do know today is that there are many hiding places that existed in the temple. Okay. We can expect that some of the articles may have been hidden. So if you know you're getting ready to be attacked, because they got to come all the way from Egypt, it's not like it's going to attack and happen today, that they might have removed some of those things and hid them. Even though Rehoboam was an evil king, he didn't follow after the ways of David, but the priest would have been the ones to hide some of the articles.
Right.
Okay. But why wouldn't they just restore the articles after they had been attacked and stuff? Well, you start going through kings and you look at the next king. Was he a good king? No, he's not. You start going through, there aren't many good kings there. So when you start going through, there are not a lot of good kings. Most of them were evil. Okay. Now I know a lot of people have taken this that hold to the Melchizedek priesthood, that there are those that there's a book of the law and the book of the covenant, and that's why we're the Melchizedek priest, whatever. And I don't believe that. But anyway, I don't believe that the word that Yah spoke, I don't believe that the word that Yah was spoken to Moshe to be written down was everything. I believe it was the words, the first account words given in Deuteronomy. That was what was given to the priest. That's what's called the Torah. And that was what was beside the ark. And that some of the priests, possibly knowing they were going to be attacked and some of the articles taken, started hiding some of those articles. And then later we see that a priest, when we have King Josiah, who is a godly, good king, come on the throne, and he starts replenishing and rebuilding the temple and, making everything good and tearing down all these high places, that they find this scroll. And then they start repenting and taking it. So I see that's what, and now I'm not discounting Genesis through Numbers. I believe they're true, but I believe they're third person accounts. So that's why I believe that Deuteronomy is the greatest book of
Well,
the
it
Torah.
had to be because, and two, God Yahweh, he had that place beside the ark. And it's all in his timing because.
Yeah, it had to be in his timing.
It had to disappear. God does everything ahead.
Yeah, it disappeared, and it was only when
With Jeremiah's daddy.
yeah,
discovered.
Jeremiah's dad
And then
discovered
Jeremiah was called to carry out.
to be a prophet. Yep. And so Jeremiah was called to be a prophet. And so that's why I said that it's not, I don't believe that it's actually a retelling of the Torah, because there are things that are in Deuteronomy that are not in the other books. I believe that it is the more accurate first person account of Moses' own words, and that's what Yah commands us to read.
Well, there had to be something different, because he wouldn't have cried
Mhm.
and basically repented because they wasn't doing everything they were supposed to be doing. So there had to be a big difference there.
Something
So
scary.
there had
Yeah,
to
and
be.
you would look to, I mean, even if you look at the Ten Commandments, the Ten Commandments given in Exodus is a little different than the Ten Commandments given in Deuteronomy.
If everybody want to get
So-
there, we'll have the,
Sorry. Okay.
we'll have the, you go get that. The blessing of the congregation.
So I know that's a little different while everybody's getting ready.
Yeah.
So,
Good listeners.
Yeah. it was-
Sure, I'm glad it's recording.
All right, y'all ready?
Yeah, he's waiting on.
still waiting on others, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Yevirakaka Yahavavirish Meire Yair Yahapanava Ilekavihuneka Yesaya Pinavileka Vayishim Leka Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine on you and show you his favor. May Yahweh lift up his face toward you and give you peace. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, Sarah Shalom. Go in peace. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat, 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 Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom.
Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Amen. Great lesson.